Too hot now, I radiate. Don't need a rear view, they're behind me. Cause my future's so bright in my blind. Hold up, why I gotta shine so bright? Don't need a reason. Escorting my haters out, they was just leaving. Can't be nobody else, I'ma be myself. So they gon' have to watch me treat myself. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? You make it look good. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. Watch this.
That was Wave Haven, Make It Look Good. And, boy, if I didn't feel like that was too much cool to live up to, that might be the new theme of the show. But no. I like the bleeps and bloops of our standard intro. I feel that's a vibe I can sustain. How are you all doing? Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do, and it's the 4th of July. I don't have anything special planned for that. I'm just delighted. Maybe we'll blow something up. I don't know, metaphorically with petty insults. But in the meantime, let's take down some turfs. Oh, hello. Let's say our hellos first. Diana Dean, good to see you. Janie Buck, hello. I made the live chat. Yes, you did, Diana Dean. You are right on time. Rustbox, hello. Hi-oh, wee friends. Hello. The anti-corporate is great to see you as well. Just chilling indeed. All right. I got to tell you, got a real bummer to start us off with. One of the great leftist channels on the old internet there has really fallen. I think they're chasing right-wing dollars. Who's to say, though? Who knows for sure ever what's going on behind the scenes? All I know is their content is despicable of late. Let's have a quick look. Well, the time has come to address it. Been a whole lot less TYT on this channel in recent months. Believe it or not, it started with a weird comment from Anna Kasparian, not even about trans stuff. Started with Anna Kasparian making a comment about how she doesn't give presents to her child relatives. Instead, what she does is puts money in a savings account for them, saying that they'll appreciate her for it later. I know that's a weird thing to raise a red flag. It's just the sort of mentality of like of not getting the point of these things that it made me nervous. All I can say. So I held off on TYT for a while, and then the anti-trans stuff came. There was that weird interview with Ben Shapiro. To be honest, I liked parts of it. I thought she raised some good points. I might have shown part of it here, but she didn't really raise much objections to a lot of things I found awfully objectionable. Followed by not wanting to use the term birthing person for very strange reasons. Then going on into some of her weirder takes, which these days they've gone full right wing, and Cenk Uygur seems to be following her. He said some weird stuff on TYT as well, which boils down to essentially if you're fighting for trans rights, you're somehow harming other people's rights. Isn't that just the core of what happens on the right wing? They try to convince you that sticking up for one group hurts another. Dark times for the Young Turks, and I really hope that John Iderola and some of the other good eggs remaining at that network abandon ship. But let me tell you about one of the good eggs who left that network. The handle is Ben Carlo, although I believe she's a trans woman these days. Whatever. They're a former TYT person who has left and apparently tried to pull out Jank and Anna, or at least Jank, and they talk about in their video here, at least in the early parts, they talk about a phone call they had with Jank Ugert that I think is incredibly enlightening. Let's have a look.
Alright, so in case it wasn't obvious from the title of this video, I'm done with TYT. Now,
Title is why I left TYT. Sorry.
before we get into like everything about this isn't about all of the hosts. There are actually a ton of people at TYT that I think are genuinely cool people. This is mostly about Jank and Anna. But of course, since like they're the people that are like the big names on the network and Jank kind of like owns the company, it's a pretty big deal when they do something like, I don't know, become incredibly transphobic and start what appears to be a ridiculous right-wing grift. I mean, literally everything from the things that they said about homeless people to the stuff that they said about abolitionists and their general sort of like refusal.
Truly, I don't know what they said about homeless people, and I'm afraid to find out. But you'll see when we get to the end here, my recommendation wouldn't change no matter how awful it was or how redeeming it was if it ended up being something I agreed with. Doesn't sound like from context it would be, but irrelevant. But it was really sad to hear that as well.
To hear the people that are criticizing them and saying, no, this is what people are actually trying to say, you're not really hearing what we're saying, or you're not listening. Now, we're not going to focus on literally all of the right-wing things that they've been doing lately, especially in the past year. They've done this pivot where they go after prison abolitionists, people who say defund the police, homeless people, and anybody that they think is a radical left, because
Okay, just because I enjoy very much being a lefty in disagreement, I'm kind of for not saying defund the police anymore. I don't think we should harp on people that do, really. I just think it's bad messaging to get what you want. I'm all for actually doing the things that defunding the police calls for when you crack into what it actually means. But the problem is, it's poor communication. The reason for short phrases like this is not just to get people interested in seeing you and noticing you. It's to sway people, and it does the opposite. It's negative advertisement, in my opinion. But that's not the main point of this video. Main point of this video is the phone call that this person had with Jank Ugert, which I want to get to. But I do want to add in that sticking point. I don't think everything TYT has done in recent days is all bad. I don't even think it's all in bad faith, but some of it definitely is, and some is all you need, in my opinion. Not a wrong take. It's fine to have a wrong take. It's fine. But to approach your politics dishonestly and to intentionally lie to people, that, in my opinion, is bordering on unforgivable. I guess it depends on a case-by-case basis, but it's not good.
You know, doing the enlighten the centrist thing is really a smart move in the year 2023, right? I still got that calendar right. No, we're mostly going to be focusing on their transphobia, which they have been escalating
there you go.
rapidly, which I guess is something that everybody really predicted would happen starting, I think, about 6 months ago, 4 months ago, when Anna Kasparian put out a tweet complaining about the use of the term birthing person, which is really, really funny because she kept on talking about how, like, it erases women, and it minimizes womanhood down to just body parts. Except for it literally doesn't. Everybody very immediately pointed out that that's a silly thing to say, that in fact, thinking that the term woman and birthing person are completely interchangeable actually does reduce women to body parts.
Okay. This is a useful thing for us to see, this downfall of Anna Kasparian, because you start to see how the right wing comes about. The right wing in the United States, I'm talking about specifically. And really, right wing is not a good phrase for them anymore. The MAGA folks do not really have a set of, I say this all the time, like political principles. They don't have a governing ideology. What they have is a collection of things that Anna Kasparian has just done. So, look at the technique there. Anna Kasparian, if you just look at her tweet, she says, the meltdowns over wanting to be referred to as a woman rather than a birthing person is pretty wild. Here's what is implied by her saying that. She's implying that leftists are walking around saying, you can't say woman. Hey, you can't say woman. You're supposed to say birthing person. If you're like, yeah, I'm a 42-year-old woman. I live in Iowa and I weld metal for a living. Whatever. That's a straw man that she's done right there. And this presenter is going to tell us the context in which birthing person was used. But I don't think they clarify this, so I will up front before they say it. Anna was responding initially to the use of the phrase birthing person at all. Birthing person, whether or not you think that's an awkward phrase or whatever, it was being used in specific situations to refer to literally things to do with giving birth. It was just some polite folks out there looking for a phrase to use. Women can be birthing people, and birthing people can also not be women. Do you understand the difference? Awkward phrase? Maybe. Is there a better one out there? Maybe. I literally don't know. That's not the point. The point is Anna Kasparian was responding to an argument that wasn't being made. And when that starts happening, red flags better shoot up. And they did. And I'll tell you, people responding to Anna this quickly genuinely gives me hope. As sad as it is to see Anna chasing right-wing dollars, which I assume is what's happening, the response of the audience, the savviness of the audience to pick up on this gives me a lot of hope.
Out that that's a silly thing to say, that in fact thinking that the term woman and birthing person are completely interchangeable actually does reduce women to body parts. And what,
to put it more concisely than I did in that last rant, it's like all all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. There.
Precipitated this is even more silly because it was originally in reference to AOC and other politicians using the term when they're talking about abortion rights. And I don't know if you know this, but abortion rights are pretty specific to people with uteruses who are capable of having children. And so the term birthing person is a pretty useful term to be narrow enough to be specific, but also cover all of the relevant people. And that's why politicians have been using it in that context.
Hence, when Anna Kasparian was saying, I don't like being referred to as a birthing person. I want to be called a woman. That's why it was anti-trans. Because there are trans men. And look, we already know that gender is fluid. Our words for gender is fluid. When my daddy was a baby, he used to get he all the pictures of him are in dresses because they used to dress up babies in dresses because they really didn't even consider you having a gender back in the 20s until you were old enough to do something foul with your body parts. So, the point just being, this is some turf stuff Anna was really on. And the fact that she couldn't just listen to some rather simple, sensible arguments is worrying.
Since posting the original tweet, literally it seems like they keep going back and forth whenever they hear that argument. Basically, if there's somebody reasonable in the room with them saying why the term birthing person might be used, then they're like, yeah, I guess it makes sense in that context, but I just don't like it. But when somebody reasonable isn't around, then they just go and complain about the term birthing person again. And that really is why so many people predicted that they were going to go into this extreme turf pipeline, because, of course, that's a very common starting point right there. The trans people are erasing women. Oh my god. But then everything escalated when they decided to talk about trans people in sports, which is a very common thing that a lot of cisgender people like to complain about because they don't understand how hormones work. And instead of attempting to try and get any type of understanding, they just want to sit and argue about their assumptions about how they think hormones should work. They come in with all of these assumptions about biological males and think that there's some sort of magic secret advantage that just exists persistently regardless as to what hormones are literally dictating what your body is doing at the time. And that's where I came in, and I started tweeting at some of the hosts saying that, hey, you're wrong about this, that, or the other thing, you're missing these details, hey, you're literally just being transphobic right now. I even reached out to people within the network to say like, hey, I would like to maybe sit down with Cenk and maybe even have an on-the-air conversation where I could talk about how all of this stuff actually works. You know, I may not be a doctor, but I like to think that in my master's degree in biotechnology and my experience literally being a trans person, who, by the way, most trans people will do a ton of research about hormones before they get on them because a lot of doctors don't really know that much about it. So,
Two things. Thing number one, Jesus Christ, a master's? A master's. Why does everybody have to be so much more educated than me? Christ Jesus. Thing number two. Thing number two. Yeah, very reasonable reaction to all this, in my opinion. I don't think you can be quiet as part of such a network when they are doing things like that and still hold your head high. So kudos to Carson here for oh wait, not Carson. Kudos to the host for being brave.
So that's actually something that I did, where I spent a
Let's get
ton
to
of
that phone
time
call, though.
like reading through like research papers about what would be like the best for my transition, how it would go, and things like that. So I'd like to think with my background, with some experience in biology, and you know, reading a ton about how specifically hormone replacement therapy works for trans women like myself, I might know a thing or two about all of these things. And I figured, hey, if Cenk doesn't know about this, maybe it'd be interesting for him to learn. But with that though, he wasn't really interested in having an on-the-air conversation because, you know, he seemed pretty intent on not changing his mind, but he was open to having a phone conversation. So I handed to him on that, like, yeah, great. So we had a chat over the phone. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get into the details of literally every single thing that we talked about. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis because that's really all that's important. And there are two main sticking points that I really want to touch on that happened within that phone call that I think were really a sign of like how far things were gonna go, and honestly how much further things might go from here still. The first sticking point was Cenk seemed convinced of this idea that I'm living in some sort of bubble. They've even said it on the air, that people fighting for trans rights are all living in some sort of bubble. The problem with that is I have a lot of random trans people from a ton of different political perspectives that will like reach out to me about like, hey, how are things going at TYT? Or hey, you're really inspiring. You know, stuff like that. And I also have like a decent circle of friends and family, many of which who are sort of all over the place politically. I told Cenk very specifically, you know, I have friends that are like big Joe Biden fans, right? Like they are theoretically to your political right. His reaction to that was quite literally laughter, which I just thought was like so hilarious. And he just kind of wouldn't believe. He was like, no, you're in a bubble. You're in a bubble. And I kept pressing. I was like, no, Jenk, you don't understand. I matched with a random person on Tinder, and the first thing that they started talking to me about is how transphobic TYT has been lately. Because I think that they had just kind of figured out who I was. And Jenk was like, no, no, see, you're living in a bubble. And it's like, yeah, okay, buddy. That completely random person I matched with on Tinder is just part of the bubble that I'm magically living in. But really, that kind of gave me the vibe of like, oh, Jenk really thinks that like every trans person is part of some sort of ideology, that we're of like a strict like political viewpoint, and that we don't just exist as like a type of person that exists, you know? It really did seem like Jenk was of the mind that to be transgender is to subscribe to a very specific political viewpoint, which I don't know if you know this, but that's actually something that the like most unhinged transphobes are like spewing as conspiracy theories and stuff like that. They're like these.
Okay, look. On its face, I understand how this misconception happens. I can be sympathetic to this, truly. Because why would you support any ideology other than the farthest left ideology if you are in a group that gets, just beaten down by anybody else? I understand how you might arrive at the misconception that being trans makes you yada, 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 super far left. Here's the question I would ask anybody listening. How much of your identity is any one part of your identity? How much, if you're Irish in your heritage, how much do you think about your Irishness when you're voting? How much do you think about, if you're left-handed, how much do you think about that? If you're right-handed, how much do you think about that? If you're ambidextrous, and so on and so forth. If you've got blonde hair, if you've got dark hair, if you've got curly hair, if you have wavy hair, how much do you think about it? Probably not a tremendous amount. You would probably think about it more if there was somebody out there trying to literally get ambidextrous people killed. Yeah, you'd probably think about that. But would it still be everything you thought about? I don't believe so. So when Cenk Uygur's out there thinking that all trans people live in a trans bubble that only cares about trans issues, you got a problem. And it's a lot more understandable when people that don't have a show fall into these fallacies, because you probably aren't thinking about these folks all day or the very specifics of this or that. But I think you have a different level of obligation when you do have a show. Real big problem with TYT right now. This is going to be a two-parter, folks. We're going to come back to this in a moment, this very same piece. I want to hear the second half of this conversation, but I got to take a break to see what the Wicked community has to say about this. Cortez Crimson, good to see you. Is anyone else having to take care of their dog right now? Yeah. There is a couple of pooches who are in my new place, which is underground. So your old pal Jake is. Wicked Foxy Dragon. I think a lot of people, whether they are trying to support trans people or against them, we are all uneducated about it unless we personally know someone who is trans. Yeah, and you know what? As well it should be. If I meet someone from a previously uncontacted tribe in South America somewhere, they exist, and we're both picked up by the same storm and tossed onto an island together, it's understandable that I wouldn't suddenly know a lot about them, right? It's literally the same thing. Trans people have been hidden in all but caricature from our view. One of my favorite movies as a kid was FX, starring a couple of drunks. I don't remember who, but they were very funny. And then FX2 came out, and there's a whole bit to open it up that just like makes a mockery of trans folks. And I didn't even consider that until like this year when I was looking back at it, and I was like, oh yeah, that happened, huh? That's why I think there must be a different standard for people who are just learning about this. And oh, by the way, people who are just learning about this tend also to be pretty unbigoted, meaning they understand that some trans people are going to be absolute scum, just the worst human beings. Some are going to be damn near saints. They're going to, in fact, run the spectrum of all of humanity, because trans people are just people. So finding out in which ways this tends to go is important, and having folks like Cenk Uygur approach us the way he did, breaks my heart. Just because I want to learn more, but at the same time, being uneducated makes us say crazy things, says Wicked Foxy Dragon, even if we don't mean to. I know there are a ton of questions I would ask trans folks just because I want to learn more, but at the same time, I don't want to offend them with questions. Yeah, I do. I would like to hire a trans lady and a trans gentleman, and in some future thing, and literally just have them be like, there's no wrong questions. I have no shame. I'll answer anything. Love this channel, says Han Solo. Guys, keep it up. Well, I absolutely will. Yes, indeed. The team will keep at it. Yep, Rex Trek. Hence individuals, 100%. All right, let's check out part 2 of this. Let's check out part 2 of this conversation with Cenk Uygur on the phone with one of the trans members of TYT before they say they left TYT. First part was just sort of giving us an intro to what was happening and what was happening behind the scenes. Part 2 is where, in my opinion, of the phone call, is where we really see that there is a problem with Cenk Uygur, not just Anna Kasparian. Let's have a look.
Trans rights activists are all part of this strict ideological group, and they're infecting people with this radical gender ideology. Is literally what like these unhinged right-wingers are saying. But it does kind of seem like Cenk is just kind of in that camp of like, oh, if you're trans, you must by definition be like some sort of radical leftist. You know, clearly like not connecting the dots about people like Caitlyn Jenner or Blair White existing, which honestly was just really, really frustrating to have in that conversation, because the people that are in my circle of friends are people who like literally have been homeless in their lives and people who literally are making like ridiculous amounts of money. I have a pretty broad circle, you know. Something that kind of happens sometimes when you're like a polyamorous trans woman that's like a little bit popular on the internet. It turns out that you can.
And let's just take a moment to appreciate blessings for this person here. They're getting the best of every world. Good God. Polyamorous in the time of Tinder. Good for you. And a little bit famous on the internet. Great for you. That means you get recognized sometimes, and it's fun. You go into your areas, you get to be a little bit famous, but you also get to go to the store and not have people ask you about your business. That is, I mean, hey, if you're out there, if you're listening to this, good on you. Enjoy yourself. I'm going to live vicariously through you.
Build a pretty wide circle of people from like different perspectives and backgrounds and stuff. I know, what a shocker. But then there's the other part that was like even more disturbing, which was I pointed out something that Anna had said on the air, where I was like, hey, Anna said this bit about doctors giving hormone therapy to children because they were afraid of being called transphobic. And I was very clear. I was like, you know that's not happening, right? Like, you know that that isn't happening. And Cenk's response was, I don't know. See, I could see it happening though. And I'm like, no, but you couldn't, because if that actually did happen, that would be medical malpractice, and it would be like a federal case to just give kids hormone replacement therapy because you didn't want to seem transphobic. That's ridiculous. On its face is ridiculous.
That is absolutely ridiculous. And the response Cenk Uygur supposedly had. Let's be clear. This is truly one former employee's side of the conversation. But assuming it is as they say it is, and I have no reason to believe otherwise, frankly. Real big problem. Oh, it sounds like something that could happen. Well, you said it. You said it before like it was something that definitely does happen. That's a huge problem. It feels real. It doesn't that just sound like where most MAGA beliefs come from. It feels right based on my preconceived notions. So we're going to legislate. We're going to act. We're going to do things that have consequences based off of what we assumed to be true. That, ladies and gentlemen, and folks in between, that's a problem. Let's let her finish up here.
Anybody who knows anything about politics would know that not only would that be a federal case, but it would be like national headlines.
Yes.
Every single newspaper would turn that into the biggest story for months. I mean, literally, the biggest story transphobes have had for the past 2 months is Dylan Mulvaney being on a can of Budweiser. So do you think that they really wouldn't make it national headlines even if it just happened once? But no, Cenk still doubled down and was like, I don't know, I could see that happening. And it's like, great, we have somebody who is like the head of a news network who is like basing political opinions off of things that he could see happening. Like, what a wonderful position to be in at this point. Like, the real brilliant 5-head political take right there. I could imagine this scenario, and that really says something about society, doesn't it?
Well, two things. I was going to say, I have technically 100 more subscribers than she does. That's a damn travesty. We gotta fix that. Pop over to her channel, and I recommend subscribing. Because if for no other reason, you're gonna get that tea. Look, I'm a happy drunk and a rapscallion who sometimes does things specifically to just narrow down the subscribers they get. No reason this person who was on TYT should have less than I. So let's correct that. Thing number 2, when I was wondering why it happened, and then I heard this.
Really says something about society, doesn't it? And that
At least she looks pretty when she's laughing. Christ. Doesn't have my chortle, but I'm gonna make fun of that laugh substantially because I am still a petty bitch.
That had to be one of the most unhinged parts of that phone call. But whatever. I sent him some research papers about trans people in sports that went into detail pretty clearly about like, hey, there's no evidence that there's any reason to discriminate against.
Let's see what happens when somebody thinking this way gets new facts.
Against trans people in sports. And that was like the conclusion that it came to pretty firmly, right? Hey, there's no evidence that we should discriminate against trans people. What a wild concept. It's amazing. I know. But Cenk apparently has learned the wrong lesson from that, especially when you look at some of the clips from his most recent rant about trans people that he just did the other day regarding trans people in sports and the extreme radical activists that support trans people in sports. Now, let's listen really quick to some of the clips from this rant to see where exactly Cenk is on these issues.
Look, it goes on. This person plays a great many clips. Good for them. They are all interesting. I watched the first half of this. I'm going to watch the back half post stream, but I just wanted to talk about the phone call, and let's talk. Whoop, not that though. Let's talk about it on the other side. So we have discovered Anna Kasparian has been saying some awfully concerning things about trans folks. Some, frankly, rather harmful things about trans folks. She has been dishonest in her discourse publicly. Cenk Uygur has also said some rather disturbing things in that video. She goes on to point out how Uygur is talking about how it's not a popular issue sticking up for trans folks, even though quite the opposite has been shown to be the case. It's every time the right tries to start a new hate campaign about trans folks, they lose votes. And they've given us a political gift, although in reality it's a nightmare, of still trying to target trans folks. And if we give in to that, then it will become a winning issue for them. If we act like there's something bad about sticking up for human beings, we're actually going to give them a victory where they had none. Right now, it's a massive liability for them. So Cenk Uygur is just flat out wrong there, and I have to question why. Is he a dumb person? I don't think so. Is Anna Kasparian a dumb person? I definitely don't think so. Are they good people? I don't think so. I think they are chasing an audience. That simple. They're going after a new demographic. I don't know this. It's the only explanation I can offer. But really, functionally, it doesn't matter. What needs to happen is they need to knock off this anti-trans hatred. They need to knock off the bigotry. They need to knock off this behavior. The way I would recommend we do that is by everybody just taking a little break from TYT. In view of the fact that they have been arguing on the left on many issues for many years, I wouldn't say permanent, forget about them just quite yet. I'm damn close to that being my personal recommendation. This is some disturbing behavior, and they could do a lot of harm, particularly if they pull a Tim Pool and keep saying they're on the left while they advocate for far-right insanity. Could do a lot of harm. But as of now, I would say take a break from TYT. And that break can end when they reverse course on their bigotry. I think you should give them a taste of the audience they're going to lose when they try to pick up bigoted viewers. Oh, it breaks my heart. Let's see what y'all are talking about. Rex, wireless mic. I've seen comments saying that TYT was starting to lean the wrong way lately. I didn't see it, but I don't often watch the main videos with Cenk and Anna. But I did see the Surf's interview said, yeah, and Rex Trek says agreed. It sucks, man. It's really disappointing to see. They were one of my mainstays for a while. I loved them. Dean says, I always take TYT with a grain of salt. You're wise to do so. And let's do a to be fair from the anti-corporatist. To be fair, Cenk is older than Mike and I, so he comes by being a boomer honestly. Fair enough. Fair enough. The anti-corporatists, they're listening to too much right-wing programming. I'm 100% when I say that we need to be focusing on our own things and organizing. Yeah, I'm halvesies. I think you got to know what the other side is up to some degree. I also think you need to learn from the other side. As corny as this will sound, go back to Rome and see how they conquered all the world that they cared to. When they lost, and hey, the left loses sometimes. All sides lose eventually. When they lost, they learned from the loss, and they adapted the tactics that worked. And I think we have the necessary hindrance of morality. We can't call ourselves what we've been calling ourselves, the good guys, and do everything that MAGA does. That said, we surely can view them. We can look at their rhetoric, their rhetorical technique, how they talk to folks. We can look at how they interact with their politicians and learn a lot. So I do think there's value there, but I also agree it's not an efficient use of energy to try to convert people who have chosen to walk down that path. And the reason it's not efficient is because we could convert none of them, not a one, and we could still win simply by getting reasonable people out there voting. So I do think that is probably the better path to take. That said, it certainly is helpful to convert. When you convert one person, a drop of purity falls into their community, a drop of sense. At the very least, their absence is felt from that community. And every time you convert one, you gain an opportunity to start a chain reaction. Any one person we convert might turn out to be the whisperer for that side. And if that is so, good. I also think that right now in 2023, we have the time. We have the time. And it's great training, if nothing else, because if you can learn to dance with the devil directly, when the little imps come up, when you have people that have watch Fox, but like once a month, you're gonna just destroy that. You're gonna plow through that conversation and win immediately. But acknowledged, it is not an efficient way. Wireless Mike says, all right, let's go up to the anti-corporatist. Anti-corporatist, to be fair, Jank is... All right, right. Wireless Mike says, I think you're right about that, the anti-corporatists. They've been catching hell from the start. True. Wicked Foxy Dragon, true, but does that excuse this behavior? No. Han Solo. I agree the rest are good, but lately Midas Group views more with me. Yeah. Even when I disagree with them, which if you're a regular watcher of this channel, you'll hear me do all the time. I still think they come by their opinions honestly. And that's what matters. That is so important. So kudos to the Midas Touch folks. Even Jordy, who is clearly their money-interested person, he wears it on his sleeve, and I respect that so much about him. Yeah, Wicked Foxy Dragon puts it well. Every political journalist and commentator knows what they are getting into when they take the job. If you are being who you truly are, then it doesn't matter what is thrown at them. 100%. Perfectly put. I think that's a good spot to end that particular segment on. All right, next part is going to be super hippy dippy. No video, just us chatting. Yeah, this might be the hippiest segment your old pal Jake throws at you. Just want to talk about vibes. You know? Hear me out. I've had a couple of very enlightening conversations lately, where I'm trying to talk to folks that don't follow this quite so much, and luckily one of our members, I'll pass on saying who because I didn't ask them for their blessing. But one of our members and I were talking about a couple of folks that are just, they don't follow politics all that closely. And if they do, they're getting their information secondhand from people that watch Fox News all the time. It's a real problem, but those are folks that are reachable, that are swayable. One thing that you have to understand is that remains, despite the massive amount of interest in political topics, that remains the majority of American voters. People that just don't follow things all that closely. And if you think the world has gone mad, good news for you here. Madness has just grown in the spaces that have been ignored. It's not as bad as it may seem, but it is bad. It's still not good. What am I talking about? I'm talking about folks that voted for Trump because they always vote Republican, and folks that voted for Biden because they always vote Democrat, or folks that saw one or two mean tweets from Trump and thought, oh, that's not very nice. I'll vote Biden this time. I'll give Trump a timeout. Maybe I'll vote for him next time, or the Republican next time. And they haven't learned any greater lessons from this. Or people that see that the country's doing generally better now and think, see, centrist Democrats were right. And I tell you, as soon as this stuff stops being dangerous, the Chris Christies and the Joe Bidens of the world will creep back into the places of power. I realize Biden's in there now, but the Senator Bidens of the world will creep back into their places of power and maintain the status quo, which is bleeding us slowly as opposed to quickly. So what to do? Well, let's look at the perspectives. Here is somebody I talked to in person. They gave me their breakdown of what they think of politics broadly. And they said, I feel like the right person always comes up for the time they're needed. This person obviously is very spiritual, but they meant it more in terms of when I asked for clarity, they meant it in terms of how Americans vote. They said Americans tend to vote for just the right person for the time, and even Trump, in his own way, as ugly as that was, weirdly they kind of aligned with me a little bit here, was the right person. Because he was an expression of our dissatisfaction with how things are going. So why not vote for a destructive element? Weirdly similar to what we've been talking about here, which is that I think Trump did the country a lot of good. Because that's what rock bottom looks like. Okay. That is, that's your come to Jesus moment. When you look up and realize Donald Trump is the president, that's how you know the country isn't working. Okay. But then we went on, because this is a person that was alive when Ford was in office and Nixon was in office, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when I pressed them about that, they acknowledged that they didn't, they pretty quickly changed their tune. They acknowledged that they weren't satisfied with a lot of the things that were done, and that Ford's failure to allow Nixon to face punishment for his crimes, Ford's intervention on behalf of Richard Nixon, likely led to Iran-Contra, likely led to what we're dealing with now. And if you go all the way back to Reconstruction, our failure to follow through on Reconstruction, same issue. It led to all the things beyond that. It's why we still have assholes walking around with Confederate flags on their hats. People that are asking to be de-toothed real quick. it brought to mind for me a very interesting phenomenon, which I've seen phrased 1,000 ways, and we need to get over in this country, which is people vote on vibes. They vote for the person that feels right in the moment. That's just what it comes down to in the United States. We're told that we have to participate in this democracy, but we are presented constantly with things that are confusing and complicated and contradictory. And we're usually being told one heavily skewed version of what is being discussed from one side and another from another side. And we live in an era where you can pick the official looking news organization that says the side you want to think is right is right. And so, without definite truth to guide us, we wind up in this position where all we're left with, and really it turns out it's been this historically, one way or another, all we're left with are the vibes. And that's no way to run a country, because you do wind up with personalities that present themselves in a way that feels right for the times. Ronald Reagan presented himself as an optimistic, kindly old man, which felt right. Morning in America. Felt right for the times. But the things he did were monstrous. He made it 2 a.m. on Devil's Night in America, financially. So, how do we cure that? And that's what I want to knock around with you guys in the comments. How do we cure this? My basic thought, and this is what I was discussing with our member very briefly, my basic thought is to, at the beginning of conversations with people, ask them what principles they hold. Do you believe government should X? Do you believe people have the right to decide Y for other people? So on and so forth. And when they tell you something that they are supporting, a policy that they're supporting, that is in conflict with that, then bring it back. So if, for example, you say, does the government have a right to decide what medical care you can get? If they say no, well, you're going to win every anti-trans conversation, every abortion conversation, mostly. Unless there's somebody who's really, really well thought out on that, which I have not run into in the wild, if I'm honest. And even then, you're going to win the point, at the very least. I think this is the most realistic path to getting some people, and I have to admit some, not all, but some people, to start looking at the substance of politicians. Victory for us. This is going to be the hardest thing for us to accept because we work so hard to be right. You guys bust my balls all the time. Let me rephrase that a little less blue. You guys bust my chops all the time, and I love it. You guys keep me on the path of the righteous man, on the straight and narrow, as they say. Other lefties pick apart their stuff all the time. So we take, I think, a great deal of pride. Like somebody with 8-pack abs loving to go shirtless. We take pride in being right. And it's going to be hard for us to accept that victory in these conversations with these folks is not that suddenly this Trump person is going to vote for Bernie. Victory is us getting these folks to honestly scrutinize the things they are listening to. If you're right, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let the facts do the work for you. But don't tell them what the end of the book is. Don't read them the last page of the book and expect them to become avid mystery novel readers. You're going to have to sell them on the experience of it. You're going to have to sell them on ways to scrutinize their own beliefs, the benefits of scrutinizing their own beliefs, and scrutinizing the people who are talking to them, the people who are asking for their support, and the people who are asking them to support somebody else. The news folks and the politicians. You're going to have to get them being a little more critical. And I'm not going to lie to you, it ain't easy. But the way you do it is to, number one, ask them who they are, what they believe in personally. Broadly and personally. And number two, listen to what they are saying, both literally and between the lines. When I hear somebody complaining about George Soros influencing politicians, what I'm really hearing is that, number one, this person was told the Jews are bad with code words, and number two, they believe that rich and powerful people are influencing politicians. And you know what? They're half right, because rich and powerful people really are influencing politicians. So if you want to work with them, you can work with them. You can say, tell you what, I don't agree that it's just George Soros, but here's a bill that would prevent George Soros from doing exactly what you say he's doing. This would prevent secret donations from billionaires, yada, yada, yada. You want to take that down? Join me on this bill. You can do that, and that's good. And that's working with folks in the moment. But you can go farther, too. You can say, so you're saying you don't like George Soros interfering this way. Okay. Can I take that to mean you don't like people with that much money being able to have that much influence over politics, regardless of which politics they support? And then have those deeper conversations, asking people what they actually believe. And often, if you ask people what they believe, if they don't have an answer in the moment, they might become interested in finding that answer. Let's see what the Wicked community has to say. I'm curious about this one, folks. Good night, Han Solo. Ah, yes, Cortez Crimson. Can I have some help? I live in Alabama. They describe trends in the worst ways. I had to press against. I didn't mind. I just want better tips on how to help and enlighten. Oh, my friend, yes. Yes, 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 yes. The anti-corporatist, man, faux news is always is always on in truck stops if I'm lucky. Saw a Newsmax on the other day. Gross. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, yes. Wicked Foxy Dragon pointing out to Cortez Crimson. The Facebook group is the place to go for that exactly. I will be on there tonight. And if you just leave a message, I will probably wind up actually spotting it tomorrow. But I'll jump on and we'll definitely talk. Yeah, for sure. I would love to have an extended conversation. I'm hoping I can figure out some way to get genuine MAGA believers on this stream, live, chatting, so that we can talk and use this as a demonstration. Anti-corporatist laughing my ass off. My homie's wife voted for Trump because she's a Republican. She's a Filipina. No! He thinks she's crazy for doing that. I do too. Dean, I don't like the Koch brothers, but I accept it. I'm half there with you. I don't like them, and I don't accept it. I would like them not to have that much influence. They are literally, by the definition of Ukraine, oligarchs. In fact, by the definition of oligarchs, they are oligarchs. They have an outsized amount of control over our personal lives because of the amount of money they've accumulated, and I just can't abide by that. Because that's sort of what the whole American Revolution was about. We didn't want royalty anymore. Wicked Foxy Dragon, be prepared, because a lot of times they don't even know who they are. That is where a big part of the problem is. Son of a gun. You're right. You're right. Cortez Crimson, the best I can do... wireless mic to Cortez Crimson. The best I can do is remind folks that unemployment is low, inflation is slowing. Here's the thing. That ain't bad, my friend. That's real good. That's short, simple, and accurate. If you want somebody to bear in mind a point later, inflation is slowing. Unemployment is low. Easy peasy. I mean, good. That is, and it more importantly, it paints an accurate picture of what's going on. The anti-corporatists, I don't really know about the true MAGA crazies. I think we need to be getting the gettable first. I generally agree. Weird story. I'm gonna go back to your earlier comment, but your second comment, the anti-corporatist, weird story. When I walked through earlier, Fox had Zelensky on wishing us Americans a happy 4th. Fox is all over the place right now. They can't decide if they want to support Putin or human beings. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, fine, good. I'm glad that that will have swayed some people who are swayable. To your earlier comment about saying I don't know about the true MAGA crazies. I think we need to be getting the gettable first. Here is where I see the benefit, and tell me if you think this is dead wrong. But this is where I see the benefit. Like pushing up weights that are heavier than you intend to generally move around in your life to build muscle. I think talking with the people that are well and good down the rabbit hole will build our ability to communicate with everybody. I think if you hear the folks who are way down the line, you will inevitably, in your personal life, come across people that are not so far down the line, that are not even really all that into MAGA, but have just sort of voted Republican out of habit. And you're going to get hit from those debates, not even debates, just those conversations with the folks that are really down there. You're going to get hit with things you weren't expecting, and you will be so practiced then. Even if you just hear these things, you're going to be so practiced in dealing with this way of thinking that for the regular folks, you're going to come off just cool, confident, incredibly well versed, and I think it's going to make getting the gettable a lot easier. I also think that if we get the gettable, as you put in a very succinct way that I appreciate, if we work on that now, I suspect a lot of our work is going to wear off by 2024, because I think a lot of the folks that are gettable are not already got because they just don't care all that much about this stuff. I think they care a little bit. I think they'll probably do the decent thing when it comes time to vote. But they also might just choose to stay home. They also might just say, I said I was going to pick up milk, though. I'll just get the milk and hope everything pans out for democracy. I think that's very probable. So I would think that rather than doing the extreme work of taking somebody from sort of on the fence to caring so much about this that they follow all the way through to 2024 now, a valuable way to spending our time would be talking to the people farthest away from us politically now, genuinely trying to talk to them, genuinely really just trying to understand them, using our very sane, very, I like to think, relatable way of communicating, contrasting it with the person that thinks, I don't know, gay frogs are blowing up space satellites or whatever the thing is these days. And using it also to get the gettable who happen to see. I don't know. It's a vague... Those are my broad thoughts on it, I guess. I think it's a useful training device, in other words. Good point about the gettable, says Paige CM. Actually, the anti-corporatist. Actually, my conservative co-driver has been listening to this body cam auditing podcast recently, and he's all, man, maybe black people aren't lying about police brutality. Yes! Yes. That's fascinating, anti-corporatist. That is genuinely fascinating. Excellent. I would very much like to listen to that myself. Radical centrist. Oh no. I think our energy is best spent on the non-MAGA, non-Republican folks who just don't pay attention. There are a lot of people out there who, when you mention Jan 6, they say, what? Oh yeah. Oh no. John Bailey, I'm late. Well, don't you worry. There's about to be... Oh, radical centrist. My heart just shattered. You're not wrong. Okay. I'll work on both. I think it's too dangerous to leave MAGA unattended, to not know what they're up to, because literally we have discovered it can become terrorism. We should probably know what they're up to, but I'll also, and what they're thinking, etc., etc. But you and the anti-corporatists, and point well taken. Get the gettable. We'll work on that as well. No reason we can't chew gum and walk. I'm so sorry, John Bailey, but I have good news for you. This might be the end of this here stream. But this here is also a 2 for Tuesday, which means we got another stream coming up in just about 48 minutes. About exactly 48 minutes. So I will see you then. In the meantime, this has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake.